Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Storytime with Belle. I hope you're all doing well and that you're feeling a little bit better than you were last time we spoke, or last time you saw me and had storytime. We are about to finish Chapter 7, The Wedding. When we last left off, Miracle Max had given a resurrection pill to Fezzik and Inigo to give to the man in black, as we all know is Westley. Buttercup is still being forced to marry Humperdinck, but she has no problem believing and thinking that Westley will come. Unfortunately, she doesn't know he's dead, and that Humperdinck is the one that killed him. What will happen? Let's find out. At 4:45, Prince Humperdinck summoned Yellen to his chambers. Yellen came immediately, though he dreaded what he knew about to happen. As a matter of fact, Yellen had his resignation written in an envelope in his pocket. "Your Highness," Yellen began. "Report," Humperdinck said. He was dressed brilliantly in white, his wedding costume. He still looked like a mighty barrel, but brighter. "All your wishes have been carried out, Highness. Personally, I have attended to each detail." He was retired, Yellen was, and his nerves long past frayed. "Specify," said the prince. He was 75 minutes away from his first female murder, and he wondered if he could get his fingers to her throat before even the start of a scream. He'd been practicing on giant sausages all afternoon and had the movements down pretty packed. But then, giant sausages weren't necks, and all the wishing in the world wouldn't make them so. All passages to the castle itself had been resealed this very morning, save the main gate. That is now the only way in and the only way out. I have changed the lock to the main gate. There is only one key to the new lock, and I keep it wherever I am. When I am outside with the 100 troops, the key is in the outside lock, and no one can leave the key from the outside. No one can leave the castle from the inside. When I am with you, as I am now, the key is in the inside lock, and no one may enter from the outside. Oof, that's confusing. Follow, said the prince, and he moved to the large window of his chamber. He pointed outside. Below the window was a lovely planted garden. Beyond that, the prince's private stables. Beyond that, naturally, the outside castle wall. "That is how they will come," he said. "Over the wall, through my stables, past my garden, to my window, throttle the queen, and back the way they came before we know it." "They?" Yellen said, though he knew the answer. "The Gildarians, of course." "But the wall where you suggested the highest wall surrounding all the floor in the castle. It is 50 feet high at that point, so that would seem the least likely point of attack." He was trying desperately to keep himself under control. "All the more reason why they should choose this spot. Besides, the world knows that the Gildarians are unsurpassed as climbers." Yellen had never heard that. He had always thought the Swiss were the ones who were unsurpassed as climbers. "Highness," he said in one last attempt, "I have not yet from a single spy heard a single word about a single plot against the princess. I have it on unimpeachable authority that there will be an attempt made to strangle the princess this very night." "In that case," Yellen said. He dropped to one knee and held out the envelope. "I must resign." It was a difficult decision. The Yellens had headed enforcement in Florin for generations, and they took their work more than seriously. "I am not doing a capable job, sire. Please forgive me, and believe me when I say my failures were those of the body and mind, and not of the heart." Prince Humperdinck found himself, quite suddenly, in a genuine pickle. For once the war was finished, he needed someone to stay in Gilder and run it, since he couldn't be in two places at once. And the only men he trusted were Yellen and the Count. And the Count would never take the job, being obsessed as he was these days, with finishing his stupid pain primer. "I do not accept your resignation. You are doing a capable job, and there is no plot. I shall slaughter the queen myself this very evening. You shall run Gilder from me after the war. Now get back to your feet." Yellen didn't know what to say. "Thank you" seemed so inadequate. But it was all he could come up with. "Once the wedding is done, I shall send her here to make ready, while I shall, with boots carefully procured in advance, make tracks leading from the wall to the bedroom and returning from the bedroom to the wall. Since you are in charge of law enforcement, I expect you will not take longer to verify my fears that the prince could only be made by the boots of Gildarian soldiers. Once we have that, we'll need a royal proclamation or two. My father can resign as being unfit for battle, and you, dear Yellen, will soon be living in Gilder Castle." Yellen knew a dismal speech when he heard one. "I leave with no thoughts in my heart but to serve you." "Thank you," Humperdinck said, pleased because, after all, loyalty was one thing you couldn't buy. In that mood, he said to Yellen by the door, "Oh, and if you see the albino, tell him he may stand in the back for my wedding. That's quite all right with me." "I will, your highness," Yellen said, adding, "but I don't know where my cousin is. I went looking for him less than an hour ago, and he was nowhere to be found." The prince understood important news when he heard it, because he wasn't the greatest hunter in the world for nothing, and even more, because if there was one thing you could say about the albino, it was that he was always to be found. My God. You don't suppose there is a plot, do you? It's a perfect time. The country celebrates. If Gilder were about to turn 500 years old, I'd know I'd attack them. "I'll rush to the gate and fight to the death if necessary," Yellen said. "Good man!" the prince called after him. If there was an attack, it would come at the busiest time, during the wedding. So he would have to move that up. State affairs went slowly, but still he had authority. 6 o'clock was out. He would be married no later than 5:30, or know the reason why. At 5 o'clock, Max and Valerie were in the basement sipping coffee. "You better go right to bed," Valerie said. "You looked all troubled. Can't stay up all night as you were a pup." "I'm not tired," Max said. "But you're right about the other." "Tell Mama." Valerie crossed to him and stroked where his hair had been. "It's just I've been remembering about the pill. It was a beautiful pill, honey. Feel proud." "I think I messed up the amounts, though. Didn't they want an hour? When I doubled the recipe, I didn't do enough. I don't think it'll work for over 40 minutes. Valerie moved into his lap. "Let's be honest with each other. Sure, you're a genius, but even a genius gets rusty. You were 3 years out of practice. 40 minutes will be plenty. I suppose you're right. Anyway, what can we do about it? Down is down. The pressures you've been under. If it works at all, it'll be a miracle." Max had to agree with her. "A phantasmagoria," he nodded. The man in black was nearly stiff when Fezzik reached the wall. It was almost 5 o'clock, and Fezzik had been carrying the corpse the whole way from Miracle Max's, back street to back street, alleyway to alleyway, and it was one of the hardest things he had ever done. Not taxing. He wasn't even winded. But if the pill was just what it looked like, a chocolate lump, then he, Fezzik, was going to have a lifetime of bad dreams of bodies growing stiff between his fingers. When he at last was at the wall shadow, he said to Inigo, "What now?" "We've got to see if it's still safe. There might be a trap waiting." It was the same part of the wall that led shortly to the zoo, in the farther corner of the castle grounds. But if the albino's body had been discovered, then who knew what was waiting for them? "Shall I go up, then?" Fezzik asked. "We'll both do it," Inigo replied. "Lean them against the wall and help me." Fezzik tilted the man in black, so he was in no danger of falling, and waited while Inigo jumped onto his shoulders. Then Fezzik did the climbing. Any crack in the wall was enough for his fingers. The least imperfection was all he needed. He climbed quickly, familiar with it now, and after a moment, Inigo was able to grab hold of the top and say, "All right, go back down now." So Fezzik returned to the man in black and waited. Inigo crept along the wall top in dead silence. Far across, he could see the castle entrance and the armed soldiers flanking it. And closer at hand was the zoo. And, of course, in the deepest brush in the farthest corner of the wall, he could make out the still body of the albino. Nothing had changed. They were, at least for now, so far, safe. He gestured down to Fezzik, who scissored the man in black between his legs, began the arm climb noiselessly. When they were all together at the top wall, Inigo stretched out the dead man, and then hurried along until he could get a better view of the main gate. The walk from the outer wall to the main castle gate was slanted slightly down, not much of an incline, but a steady one. There must be, Inigo did a quick count, at least 100 men standing at the ready. And the time must be, he estimated closely, 5 after 5 now, perhaps close to 10. 15 minutes till the wedding. Inigo turned then and hurried back to Fezzik. I think we should give him the pill, he said. It must be around 45 minutes till the ceremony. That means he's only got 15 minutes to escape with, Fezzik said. I think we should wait until 5:30. Half before, half after. No, Inigo said. We're going to stop the wedding before it happens. That's the best way, at least in my mind. Before they're all set, and the hustle and bustle beforehand. That's when we should strike. Fezzik had no further rebuttal. Anyway, Inigo said, we don't know how long it takes to swallow something like this. I could never get it done myself, I know that. We'll have to force feed him, Inigo said, unwrapping the chocolate-colored lump like a stuffed goose. Use our hands around its neck and kind of push it down with whatever comes next. Into whatever comes next. I'm with you, Inigo, Fezzik said. Just tell me what to do. Let's get him in a sitting position, I think, don't you? I always find it easier swallowing sitting up than lying down. You'll have to really work at it, Fezzik said. He's completely stiff by now. I don't think he'll bend easy at all. You can make him, Inigo said. I always have confidence in you, Fezzik. Thank you, Fezzik said. Just don't ever leave me alone. He pulled the corpse between them and tried to make him bend in half, but the man in black was so stiff, Fezzik really had to perspire to get him at right angles. How long do you think we'll have to wait before we know that the miracle's on or not? Your guess is as good as mine, Inigo said. Get his mouth as wide open as you can, and stick his head back a little, and we'll just drop it in and see. Fezzik worked at the dead man's mouth a while. Got all the way, Inigo said, tilted the neck perfect at the first time. And Inigo knelt directly above the cavity, dropped the pill down, and hit it as hard in the throat as he could. Couldn't beat me alone, you dastards! While I'll beat you each apart. I'll beat you both together! You're alive! Fezzik cried. The man in black sat immobile, like a ventriloquist dummy, just his mouth moving. That is perhaps the most childish, obvious remark I've ever come across. But what could you expect from a strangler? Why can't I move my arms? You've been dead, Inigo explained. And we're not strangling you, Fezzik said. We're just getting the pill down. The resurrection pill, Inigo explained. I bought it from Miracle Max, and it works for 60 minutes. What happens after 60 minutes? Do I die again? It wasn't 60 minutes. He just thought it was. It was actually 40. Only one had been used up already in conversation, so now down to 39. I don't know. Probably just collapse and need tending for a year or however long it takes to get your strength back. I wish I could remember what it was like when I was dead, the man in black said. I've read it all down. I could make a fortune on a book like that. I can't move my legs either. That will come. It's supposed to. Max said the tongue and the brain were shoo-ins, and probably you'll be able to move, but slowly. The last thing I remember, I was dying. So why am I on this wall? Are we enemies? You got names? I'm the Dread Pirate Roberts, but you can call me Westley. Physic. Inigo Montoya of Spain. Let me tell you what's been going on. He stopped and shook his head. No, he said, there's too much, and it would take too long. Let me distill it for you. The wedding's at 6, which leaves us probably now something over half an hour to get in. Steal the girl and get out, but not before I can kill Count Rugen. What are our liabilities? There is but one working castle gate, and it is guarded by perhaps 100 men. Westley said, not as unhappy as he might have ordinarily been, because just then he began to be able to wiggle his toes. And our assets? Your brains, physics strength, and my steel. Westley stopped wiggling his toes. That's all? That's it? Everything? The grand total? Inigo tried to explain. We've been operating under terrible time pressure from the very beginning. Just yesterday morning, for example, I was a hopeless drunk, and Physic toiled for the brute squad. That's impossible, Westley cried. It's impossible, Westley cried. I am Inigo Montoya of Spain, and I do not accept defeat. You will think of something. I have complete confidence in you. She's going to marry Humperdinck, and I'm helpless, Westley said in blind despair. Let me lay down. Lay me down again. Leave me alone. You're giving up too easily. We fought monsters to reach you. We risked everything because you had the brains to conquer problems. I have complete and absolute, total confidence in you. I want to die, Westley whispered and closed his eyes. If I had a month to plan, maybe I might come up with something. But this... His head rocked from side to side. I'm sorry, leave me. You just moved your own head, Physic said, doing his best to be cheery. Doesn't that up your spirits? My brains, your strength, and his steel against 100 troops, and you think a little head jiggle is supposed to make me happy. Why don't you leave me to death? This is worse. Lying here helpless while my true love marries my murderer. I just know once you're over your emotional outburst, you'll come up with... I mean, if we even had a wheelbarrow, that would be something, Westley said. Where did we put the wheelbarrow and the albino had? Inigo asked. Over by the albino, I think, Physic replied. Maybe we can get that wheelbarrow, Inigo said. Well, why didn't you list that amongst our assets in the first place? Westley said, sitting up, staring at the massed troops in the distance. You just sat up, Physic said, still trying to be cheery. Westley continued to stare at the troops and the incline leading down toward them. He tilted his head. What I'd give for a Holocaust cloak, he said then. There, we can't help you, Inigo said. Will this do? Physic wondered, pulling out his Holocaust cloak. Where? Inigo began. Well, you were after frog dust, Physic said. It fits so nicely, I tucked it away and kept it. Westley got to his feet again. Feet then. All right, I'll need a sword eventually. Why? Inigo asked. You can barely lift one. True. Westley agreed, but that is hardly common knowledge. Hear me now. There may be problems once we're inside. I'll say there may be problems, Inigo cuts in. How do we stop the wedding? Once we do, how do I find the Count? Once I do, where will I find you again? Once we're together, how do we escape? Once we escape... Don't pester him with so many questions, Physic said. Take it easy. He's been dead. Right. Sorry, Inigo said. The man in black was moving very slowly, now along the top of the wall, by himself. Physic and Inigo followed him through the darkness in the direction of the wheelbarrow. There was no denying the fact that there was a certain excitement in the air. Buttercup, for her part, felt no excitement whatsoever. She had, in fact, never remembered such a wonderful feeling of calm. Her Westley was coming. That was her world. Ever since the prince had dragged her to her room, she had spent the intervening hours thinking of ways to make Westley happy. There was no way he could miss stopping her wedding. That was the only thought that could survive the trip across her subconscious mind. So when she heard the wedding was moved up, she wasn't the least upset. Westley was always prepared for contingencies. And if he could rescue her at 6, then he could just as happily rescue her at 5:30. Actually, Prince Humperdinck got things going even faster than he had hoped. It was 5:23 when he and his bride-to-be were kneeling before the aged Archdeacon of Florence. It was 5:24 when the Archdeacon started to speak, and it was 5:25 when the screaming started outside the main gate. Buttercup smiled softly. Buttercup only smiled softly. "Here comes my Westley now," was all she thought. It was not, in point of fact, her Westley that was causing the commotion out front. Westley was doing all he could to simply walk straight down the incline toward the main gate without help. Ahead of him, Inigo struggled with a heavy wheelbarrow. The reason for its weight was that Fezzik stood in it, arms wide, eyes blazing, voice booming in a terrible rage. "I am the dread Pirate Roberts, and there will be no survivors." He said that over and over, his voice echoing and reverberating as his rage increased. He was standing there, gliding through the darkness, quite an imposing figure, seeming all in all probably close to 10 feet tall, with voice to match. But even that was not the cause of the screaming. Yellen, from his position by the gate, was reasonably upset at the roaring giant gliding down toward them from the darkness. Not that he doubted in his 100 men could dispatch the giant. The upsetting thing was that, of course, the giant would be aware of that too. And logically, there must, somewhere in the dimness out there, be any number of giant helpers, other pirates, anything, who could tell. Still, his men held together quite staunchly. It was only when the giant got halfway down the incline that he suddenly, happily, burst into flame, continuing his trip saying, "No survivors! No survivors!" in a manner that could only dictate deadly sincerity. It was seeing him happily burning and advancing that started the Brood Squad to scream. And once that happened, why, everyone panicked and ran. And that is the end of Chapter 7, The Wedding. I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. And soon we'll be finished The Princess Bride. Everyone, thank you so much for your support these past few weeks of me reading this book to you. It has been quite the journey. My real name is Erica Shore, and yes, I've been dressing up these past few weeks as Belle, or in Belle-inspired outfits to read to you The Princess Bride. One of my favorite things about the movie when I first saw it was that it was a grandfather reading to his sick grandson. Now, while I hope most of you at home are not ill in the way of sickness, I do know that we are all sick and tired of quarantine, of being home, of being alone, and feeling like there's nothing we can do. Another thing I love about The Princess Bride itself, especially what this book has shown, is that you can never give up, that there's always hope. I mean, Westley was dead, and still they found a way to bring him back, and still Buttercup has faith that he will save her. I don't know about you, but I am excited to see how the story finishes and unfolds. For more information about me as an actress and as a person, you can go to ericashore.com. That's ERIKASHORE.com. Please subscribe to my page for more stories after The Princess Bride, for more monologues and other fun things that I may do. Please visit me on Instagram and follow me there at Erica F. Shore, ERIKAFSHORE, and that is the same username for my TikTok. Thank you guys so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and good luck through the rest of the quarantine.